This is what we are talking about. It's actually in week 7, week 11, and week 12. And this is how I divide it. So we will have part 1, we will talk about the RAROC recording, and this is one of the single loan risk models, and we will have about new models called the probability default of multivariate data instruments. This is related to the what we call this is what we call the term structure, but multivariate. We already cover one variant, and then we'll talk about the option models of default risk, and this is actually the portfolio. This is all the portfolio risk, which means the modeling for the portfolio risk. And I think most of the things, the technical things is here. This is very straightforward when we come to the concentration risk, immigration risk, regulatory treatments, loan portfolio. We will also talk, as I told you, about the managing through derivatives. Now, this is the RAROC, and the RAROC stands for the risk-adjusted return on capital. And let me remind you, if you remember, when we talked in performance, we talked about something called economic added value. And we said economic added value, if we cover our cost to depositors, and we cover also our cost of fund for the capital, and we still have additional. So if the return cover this type and this and this, and we still have additional, then we will have something called economic added value. RAROC comes from this perspective. Now, if you understand this, which means RAROC actually does not talk about the return. We are not talking about, for example, the interest income of the loan over the loan, which is the assets. This will give us ROA. RAROC does not talk about this issue. RAROC talk about the additional, which means they want to see the marginal income, because I'm going to invest my money in risk-free, and the risk-free will give me I, which is the overnight. For example, they will give me I. Now, if this I, if I'm going to take it and I want to invest in crop rates, that will give me K. So the K minus the I will give me some type of spread. Now that spread, I want to see that spread or the additional income, which we usually measure it through the net income. We call it the net income, which actually comes from the spread plus the fees. And when I'm going to receive this spread, actually, because I'm receiving more risk, so I want to take not the asset, but the expected capital risk, which is, we call it unexpected capital risk if I go with this loan. So this is the calculation of the RAROC, which is step 1. Step 2, I want to see whether the RAROC, I want to see whether this economic added value has achieved or no. I want to see whether the RAROC actually is higher than the ROE. Now, ROE is actually the net income over the return on equity, which means after I take all this cost of depositors, I want to see whether this RORAC is higher than the ROE, and if it happens, I accept. This is what RORAC is going to do. Any loan does not satisfy this condition, I reject it. And this is how we do the issues. The problem here, it's not a problem, it's just a technical issue. I have no technical issue when I calculate the spread. I have technical issue when I calculate the cost of capital. If we understand the concepts here, then we can go to the calculation. So the benchmark is actually what? Here, the benchmark is the ROE. Now, let me go now to the model. And maybe we have seen this. So RORAC actually can look forward and backward. And you will understand this if you understand how we calculate. So the RORAC, as I told you, is actually the fees, the spread plus the fees, right? The spread plus the fees that I'm going to receive in the future over the capital risk or the unexpected capital risk. If this is the issue how to calculate the capital risk, and the capital risk when we do it is we are coming from what we call this formula, which is coming from the duration. So the duration of the assets over the assets, actually the change in the assets over the duration of the change of the asset over the assets equals the duration of the asset times the change in the interest rate over the 1 plus the interest rate. Now, how we achieve this issue by saying the future, because now we are taking, when you look at the formula, which is actually this formula is actually this formula. This formula is actually the change in loan if you look at this, this is looking for the future when I am taking the spread and fees. But actually, when I'm trying to look at the change of the R, I have to look at the, I have to look to the best. Because this, I will see how the change of how the change in the return actually happening for this company. And I cannot have it for this company. I will have the class of this company. So let's agree on this, because we want to see, we are trying to calculate the unexpected capital risk, but we are also looking at the history of the change in the interest rate. So if you look at this formula, it's the loan duration, and the R is the risk plus the premium. Let me give you an example. If I have a loan of 1 million, duration 2.7, this company belongs to is one of the AAA companies, and we have 400 companies in this category. And the market interest rate for loans in this grading category is 10%. So in this case, actually, if I'm trying to calculate if I give you now the fees and the spread, and I told you to calculate the RORAC, you still have to get the R, because you have if the formula is just like this, change in loan, which is, as I said, change on 1 plus R, This is actually, I'm calculating the change in loan. This is the RAROC. This is the fees plus the spread, right? And this is the RAROC. I can get this one, no problem. I can get this one easy. This one is easy. The change in loan, which is actually the risk here, or the capital risk. This formula is to calculate the capital risk. I can get this one. This is the capital risk. I can get this one. I can get the loan, which is given. It's just this one, which is this one, the R I can get. The problem is this one. I don't know how much is it. And I need to model it through the class of the 400 companies. If I have 400 companies, how many companies? They have 400. I want to see how can I do that and get the R. Now, to go one step, I will take the 400 companies and I will take the spread of those companies, which is the change, R minus RG. Now, RI is actually the spread for each company. Each company has different spread, which is the difference between K and I. And the RG is the, so the RI is for each company, spread for I, eighth company, for each company. And the RG is actually the risk-free. I go and I plot this difference here. This is the distribution because I want to predict the change in R. This is the distribution of the difference between RI minus RG. Now, I will take 99%. So as you can see in this distribution for this problem was 2% in the left tail and 3.5 in the right tail. I'm not going to take this one. I'm going to take only 99%. And why I'm taking the right, why the risk is here, not here, because if you look at the formula here, this formula, which is the change in loan, as I told you, duration of the loan, change in R. If this one goes up, the loan will go down. There will be much change in the loan. So my risk is actually in this area when the interest rate, when the spread is increases. If we understand this point now, usually I will just give you the R. I will give you the change in R ready, but this is to explain to you how we get it. So in this case, actually, if we come back to the same problem, of our problem, which is this one, we have loan of 2.7, we have 2.7, we have loan of 1 million, 2.7, 10%, and this is actually the spread, which have been shown here. Now, if I assume that the spread is 2 basis points and the fees is 1 basis points for 1 million, so I have actually 3 basis points of 1 million. This is my return. Remember, I want to calculate the RAROC, which is the fees plus spread over the capital risk. And the capital risk, I found it through the change in loan. This is if there is a decrease in my loan, this will be, it's an expected one, it will be charged to my capital. This is why we call it capital risk. So in this case, we calculate, I'm ready to calculate now the RAROC, and I find the RAROC is 11.11%. I just divided this by this. Where did I get the 27,000? I get it from here, from this calculation. This is the change in the loan. Now, I go to the next step because I told you it's 2 steps. Step one is to calculate the RAROC. Step 2, to see the benchmark. And I want now to see the benchmark. So the benchmark here is actually the, I give you 2 scenarios, 3 scenarios, and I told you now, what if the ROE is 10%? I guess you will say accept. Because RAROC, which is 11.11%, because the RAROC, which I calculated 11.11% is higher than the 10%. What about here? Here you will say reject, because this was not carried. Here is actually reject, or you may say, okay, let's talk to the customer. Don't let him go. I calculated this. Let's talk to the customer. So when I talk to the customer, I will say, the first rule for me, if the estimated RAROC is higher than the required return, then there will be there will be an added value, then I will accept. But if the RAROC on existing loan falls for the ROE, I can talk to the customer and tell him, look, because the change in loan is actually the duration of the loan, right? Times the loan, times the change in R over 1 plus R. And this one is the fees plus the spread. If I want to increase this RAROC, if the customer does not, if the RAROC for this company does not meet, I can increase this one, right? I can talk to the customer and tell him, how about giving me more interest? If I can increase the income here, I can increase this one. Or I can tell him, look, you want the loan for 10 years. Can we make it up to 6 years or 5 years? Because if I decrease the duration, I can increase the RAROC. So it's not the end of life, it just we can also negotiate. And this is what we say, if the RAROC falls in the existing loan below the ROE, the lending officer should seek to adjust the loan's terms to make it profitable. Again, which means talk to the customer whether he can increase the interest as coming to us, or we can decrease the duration. We can tell him we can give you a loan in shorter time, so the payment is in shorter time. This is the whole thing for the RAROC, and this is just the explanation which I just have said and explained. You can read it, more explanation here, and I am done actually with part 1. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next part.